town hall of Litzmannstadt, and it was taken off by a U.S. Army man. This uniform is a rare piece. It's a German general, and he belongs to the Adolf Hitler Brigade. And I have the boots for it, but I only show one boot here. And if you notice, he has a medallion up here that's very important. And he's not a real tall man, but he is a general. And generals in the German army, to find their uniforms is exceptionally rare. Previously, I did get a general, but when I had it examined, we found that under black light, the threads threw up white, which means it was made after the war with nylon. And it was a forgery, you call it, or whatever you want to call it, but I returned it. But this one is authentic. The gentleman with the heavy jacket there is called a doctor or an Arzt in German. If you notice the word and the Jewish star or the shield of David, in the center is the word Arzt. Arzt means doctor. So he is a Jewish doctor that can only work on Jewish individuals. But if he is a specialist and they need him for advice, he can come to the hospital or come somewhere, but he cannot touch a patient. It's forbidden. That armband is a little bit unusual. I have never seen one before, but it's probably handmade for his personal use. The second mannequin that you see there, that man is called a capo. And a capo is a man who does all the dirty work in the camp. He takes the people out of the boxcar, he moves the dead bodies, he puts them in the gas chamber, he puts them in the crematorium, he cleans the crematorium. They're working all day long. And also at this time he can get an extra ration of food. He's given a little food, more food than the others because he works hard. He also is allowed to make his own shoes. He's given a block of wood and some material and some small tacks, and he makes his own shoes. The reason for it is he cannot use the shoes that are thrown out to individuals. He's got to use a heavy shoe which can stand heat like ashes and so forth. So he takes care of the ovens. He also cleans the ovens and so forth. In the end, you'll see a woman who is not Jewish. She's a Christian woman in a dress. The dresses are not regularly seen, very rare, but she's wearing a dress and her Christian insignia. The rest are just inmates of the camp. I get them all over the world. It's an Air Force battle flag. And when I showed this near the University of Chicago, 100 people stood outside and wouldn't come in because I was honoring the German Luftwaffe. So I found one way to show defeat, and that was to take the flag and turn it upside down, that the eagle was on its head. That means it was a defeat of the Germans. In this case, you'll find the ashes of a human being from the concentration camp Auschwitz. There you'll also find next to it a fire brick. The fire brick is a little larger than the regular brick and is made to withstand high temperatures because the ovens went day and night and the skies were always red. Next to that, you'll find a lock of women's hair. When the women came to the camp, they were clipped and their hair was taken back to Germany to advance the war effort. Following that, you'll have a human skin. This skin is from Elsa Koch's collection. She had a hobby, and the hobby was saving tattoos. So whenever a man or woman came off the boxcar and she saw a nice tattoo, she pointed to them, and a few weeks after that, she got a human hide. And there you see a man and a woman, and you see two lovers kissing one another. This particular skin was shown in a movie, Judgment at Nuremberg, with Spencer Tracy and Judy Garland. Next to that, you'll find a billfold made out of the Torah. This man's name and photographs are here, and he was sent to the penal colony. The reason being, he came into the camp with some non-Jewish friends, and he wanted to be with his friends, and he was asked if he was Jewish. He said no. Later, they found out he was Jewish, and they put him in a penal colony. And in a penal colony, they get a square, 2-inch square with a hole in the middle, which means if they misbehave, shoot the son of a gun. He's no good anyway. But their life in the penal colony is very short, and soon after that, he was done away with. And here you have a photograph of the man, his uniform number, and his name, and he's from Krakow. Right here, you will find photographs or pictures of Dr. Mengele's experiment. Mengele experimented with twins, trying to give them blue eyes and blonde hair, as all true Germans should have. But by doing this, he's killed thousands of twins and never solved the problem. And when they got to a condition like you see here, they were done away with. So thousands of twins died because of Dr. Mengele's experiments. He was called the Angel of Death. And this is a uniform that came from his office. Here we find Twillem. And the Nazis didn't know the story of Twillem or what they were for. And when they saw the old Jews holding the Twillem in their hands so preciously, they took them away from them and opened them up thinking there were jewels in them. But they found later they were found only prayers in the Twillem. This is a very important piece because it verifies some of my pieces. This is a caretaker in Auschwitz, or I'll call it Birkenau. This is where the killing was done. And this uniform is being prepared for shipment to the United States. And it also has a photograph of the caretaker. Down below you have the caretaker showing a shovel that he found in the crematorium. That is on exhibit here. Over here you'll find household items like spoons, knives, and forks, and so forth, found in the building, Canada. These things were salvaged from the boxcars and so forth. Next to this, you'll find ashes. These possibly are not human ashes, but they were used for ground fill. When you want to build a ramp or something, you use those ashes, and then you pour concrete on top. Next to this, you'll find the shovel that you saw in the picture, previous picture from Birkenau. Here you find a musical instrument. The musical instrument has been made out of the Torah. When you turn this right side up or upside down, you will see the writing of the Torah on the other side of the banjo. Next to it, you'll find a box called an Ezra box. It belonged to a Jewish individual. His initials are carved on the outside, and on the bottom, his name is in Hebrew. It can be read. And there, a Nazi found the box, or took the box from him, and he put his own emblems on it, and he inherited the Ezra box. Here you'll see 2 pairs of capo shoes. These were handmade in a camp, and they're made out of a block of wood and small tacks and wire. This probably was used by European capos. And if you notice, their shoelaces are wire. They weren't given cotton thread. Wire was used for shoelaces. This style of shoe is quite different. It's made as a Dutch clot. And this is what this is a Dutch clot. And if you notice, they're very hard to walk with, and only experienced people can use those type of shoes. In this cabinet here, you'll find a gift given to the Allied soldiers from an inmate of a very rare camp called Ludwigsburg. They probably made barbed wire, I'm not sure, in the camp because they decorated this plaque with barbed wire, and the man hammered out a flower, and it gives his name and the date and the name of the camp and so forth, and it was given to an Allied soldier as a gift. Next to that, you'll see a knife and fork which comes from Adolf Hitler's collection. This is dinnerware. Part is sterling silver and part is stainless steel. In this case, you'll find the wrapper from a Cyclone B gas. Cyclone B gas was used for destroying the inmates. It was a fast way of doing away with the inmate. And the other way that it previously used was carbon monoxide gas, but it took hours to destroy the people. This took minutes. Next to that, you'll find a condenser. The condenser was used to carry the current from post to post, and it prevented the current from touching the ground. It's used to carry current from one section of the camp to the other. Here you see a banjo confiscated by a Nazi who belonged in the Air Force. The face of the Torah is made, or the face of the banjo is made out of the Torah, and if you notice, the Air Force insignia is on that. Above it, you'll find a leather belt with a buckle saying, Gott ist mit uns. Next one is a banner that's put on the cars of officials of the Nazi government. It is really a second-class Nazi. The first has the insignias on the car, but these are put on fenders. And when you went through the town, everybody had to give way to the flag on the car, and it could go through red lights or whatever was in the way. They honored the flag. Next to that, you have a helmet. The helmet is a fireman's helmet, but on one side it has a fireman's insignia, and on the other side an SS insignia. But if you notice, there's a piece of leather that comes out of the hat, and that's pulled out for the protection of the fireman when he goes into a building that hot ashes and so forth don't go down his back. In this case, you see a gorget, and when the SS officers went through the city, they put the gorget over their head, and the metal would hit their buttons and so forth, and clamor and make a little noise. Usually when the Germans heard the SS coming through the town, and they would run across the street because they were scared and honored him, but they walked away from them in general. Next to it, you have a ID for a Sunder commander. Next to that, you have a button. The button was used in Yugoslavia for coats, put on coats and so forth that were worn. This was done before Hitler got strong and compelled people to wear the Jewish star. And this was their method of ID. I had it for 25 years, but never knew what it was until a few years ago. It was explained in a New York paper that the woman found it in her collection when she was a little girl. It was on her coat, and she saved the buttons because she liked them so much. She explains and has the button in her hand. The buttons are now very rare, and museums are looking for them. Next to that, you have a Boy Scout pin, but it's a Jewish Boy Scout pin. If you notice, there's a Boy Scout emblem in the center, surrounded by the Shield of David. This was very good for Adolf Hitler, because if he wanted to find the young kids to destroy, he knew that these were under 15, and he could pick them up and destroy them. And as the trumpeter faced this way, it was black. When he swung around, it was white. So it made a very picturesque scene when the trumpeters turned from one side to the other. And that's an SS insignia. And if you notice, in two colors, one side is black and one side is white. These are two posters. The poster on the left here shows Mussolini being greeted by Adolf Hitler when they were friends. They later became bitter enemies, but this is when Mussolini came to Germany to visit Adolf. The next piece is Göring, who was probably second in command of the German Nazi movement, and he was a close friend of Adolf Hitler. And this is a picture of Göring and Hitler making future plans. This is a newspaper that was issued by Stryker, the propaganda minister. It's called the Stürme. And if you notice, this Stürme, it depicts a Jew, and it shows long fingers, a long nose, and of course he has horns. And it's a very desecrated picture. And also down here, you see the German words, Die Juden sind unser Unglück, which means the Jews are our misfortune. And it's from Stryker, who was a minister of propaganda. Here you'll find an armband. So anytime they needed help, they gave the stretcher bearer an armband, and he became an official armband stretcher carrier. Next to that, you'll find, I won't say it's Anne Frank's cup, but it did come from Anne Frank's barracks, and I can't tell you how many used it. Next to it, you'll find a stamp honoring Anne Frank's, which was issued by the Israeli government. Also, there's a medal in there that also honors the Anne Frank's memorial. If you notice, that cover or that envelope is the first day of issue honoring Anne Frank. This is an armband used in the Judenrat of Lublin. Lublin was the ghetto. There's also a camp there, but this is the armband used in the ghetto. Of course, it's a Jewish armband. These are resumes for people applying for jobs. But if you notice, the corners are torn off, certain IDs are torn off, and part of it is on fire. When the Allies came close, they tried to destroy it, that there would be no records. No one wanted to be a Nazi anymore. The Afghan was made for a German officer. It's done very beautifully. And it's in fairly nice condition. There's a couple little pauses there, but it's really nice. Here you'll find various armbands, and I'll pick out a few to explain to you. The one at the top with the skull, it notified the German people German soldiers where there were mines, so they could avoid the minefields. The top one is the insignia of the Death Brigade. This is the youth armband, the German youth armband. And here we have a very rare piece because it's the president of a Judenrat. And the president is Jewish. As you see, the Jewish emblem there and a shield of David with the number 1 in the center. And it says Judenrat Pato. Pato is the city of Poland. You have an American translation of what you see above. It says President of the Jewish Council in El Pato. Here you see the various armbands that were worn by Christians and Jews. So they're only different. The Christians had a triangle and the Jewish people had a shield of David. But the colors and so forth are all identical. So whatever they had in the Christian area, they also had in the Jewish area. This one was a Transian Christian or Gentile, and this was his ID. This is a German helmet, and when received, it was supposed to have the Germans' hair in it and blood. And it was given to me by an American soldier, or former American soldier, and neighbor. This is the Megillah. This was found in the Lutz ghetto with a chauffeur. And when I say chauffeur, I don't mean the man who drives an automobile. I mean the horn, the chauffeur. Here you see various insignias of the German army, including Death Brigade and so forth. Here you see the Jewish police armband. You see a Jewish capo armband. Here's a capo armband, and this is a Jewish inmate. This is a hat made in a camp to protect the German soldier who were freezing to death on the Russian front. The next page here is a parachute from the Battle of the Bulge, given to me by a German who was in the American Army and was an American soldier. And the Torah is the 5 books of Moses. You know it as the Old Testament. When you talk about the Old Testament, it's the Torah that they're talking about, or the 5 books of Moses. This is a nasty bayonet, and the bayonet has teeth like this. You notice that it isn't like a knife? And this was outlawed in World War I, but it was used in the camp. And when they stick it into individuals or touch them, it's very difficult to get out because of the two-way blade. It tears a man or woman apart, so to speak. This comes from the ventilators of the building Canada when it was destroyed. And it was destroyed by the Jewish inmates when the war was over. To the left, you'll find 2 pieces of mail. Normally, they have to be written on special stationery with instructions, but these were written on scrap paper. Up there, you see 2 letters. The little one at the top will be folded in 1/4 that size and rolled like a capsule. Then the gentleman there, the inmate, puts it on his ear. And a friend of his who was a guard comes by and hits him on the ear and takes the message off and delivers it to his wife, who was a friend of the inmate. Below that, you'll see another letter, which I believe was the last letter the man has written. In this letter in Polish, which is verboten, He wrote a letter to his wife thanking her for the very wonderful years they've had together. And he kisses her good night every evening. But this time he wants to say goodbye to his darling, because he has dysentery and doesn't expect to live. So he says, goodbye, darling, goodbye. Next to it, you'll find a woman's leg. And this woman was operated on by a few doctors. And they took the muscles and nerves out of her legs and treated it like an open wound, which means that it never heals correctly, like a sewing wound would. And her hair is in various directions, inside her leg and outside. She was approached and asked if she would go to the Nuremberg trials and identify the doctors who performed this operation. She lived quite away from the Nuremberg trials, but when she was approached, she said she'd go there even if she had to crawl. You will also find the document numbers at the Nuremberg trial and the doctors who performed their operation. Their name is also there. Next to that, you'll see two women in the barracks. If you notice, they look horrible. They have no hair. The hair was shaven off or clipped off by barbers. And then they were given a uniform, a pair of shoes normally, and a pot. Now, if they use their shoes or their pot, they can starve to death. No one would help them. So what we notice there is they're laying in their barracks, protecting their shoes, and also covering their plates and so forth. Because without the plates, without the shoes, you couldn't work. They can endure a colder temperature. This was of great help to the Luftwaffe, because when their planes were destroyed or they made a parachute jump and so forth into the North Sea, which was very cold, they were always told to keep their back of their head out of water. That helped them survive. This piece was given to me by a philatelic friend, Bob Lane. And if you notice, it has an ID that the woman carried in her pocket, and its identification, and it also has a boxcar number. Now, and above that, you'll find the list of people who went to the crematory on July 5th, 1943. Now, Mr. Lane, who I obtained this from, was proud of the fact that he had three pieces that had one person's name on it. That's very unusual. But when they handed it to me in the beginning, I wanted nothing to do with it. So finally, I gave it back to Bob. I didn't want to see it at all because it gave me goose pimples. And I gave it back to Bob, and I explained to him, this is not for me. And as I gave it back to him, my wife saw my family name on it, and I got goose pimples, and I says, we gotta collect concentration camp. So my wife and I gathered together this collection of concentration camp mail. That's a famous artist who was given permission by the Gestapo or the SS to put a painting on a drawing, which is very unusual. But I do believe in return he had to put a painting or paint the Gestapo's family or a member to offset the liberty that he received. And if you notice, the painting shows a tree on a cliff. And they usually tell stories in those paintings. So you try to find out what story he's telling by putting the tree on the cliff. And what I think he's trying to tell his wife is that he's alive, and he's green, and he could go up or down. And he wanted to show his wife he was still alive.